What's up, superheroes? Welcome to another episode of 21 Day Hero Show. 21 Day what, you say? Exactly, you heard it right. From now on, our podcast will be named 21 Day Hero Show instead of Hustle Duo Show. And of course, along with the website and social media and basically all the brand, from now on it changes to 21 Day Hero. And you might be wondering why. Well, the initial idea of the Hustle Duo was that me and my wife Davila, we would go on these challenges, try different routines and habits, and we would basically do that, document it, and put it on YouTube and other channels. But we kind of grown away from that initial idea, and we needed a brand that represents the core of our activities much better and put you guys at the center of attention, our community. So we thought 21 Day Hero will represent us much better. It will give a hint that our core activity is actually doing these 21-day challenges for body and mind, and our core belief that everybody's a superhero and you can really kind of acquire the superpowers by going onto these challenges. So here we go. We're still the same people doing the same things, just simply a new brand called 21 Day Hero. Anyway, so in this episode, I chat with my guest, Trach, who's an author, podcast guest, and a life coach. And she helps people to live their best life. And her work focuses on things like mastering your mindset, overcoming the self-limiting beliefs, ditching the inner critic, and really becoming who you really are. And her philosophy is that if you get the inner work done right, the outside will follow. And in this particular episode, we chat about things like how did she end up leaving the life paths that was not hers, how to start things and take action, how to master your mindset, how to use visualization to achieve things that you want, and obviously many other interesting topics. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and so let's say hi to Kelly. Hi, Kelly, and welcome to the Hustle Duo Show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a treat to be here, so thank you.
No, the honor is mine, I'm telling you. It's super awesome to have you here. Thank you so much for everything you do. And the positivity and the energy you bring, and I think I saw that while I was making a small research about you, and I saw that a lot of people actually mention the energy you have. Like it feels like it's contagious. Like your smile, everything. It's just awesome to have that
Thank you.
positivity. Yeah. So
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
no, that's my pleasure. And the very first question is, if you have listened to other podcast episodes, I think you know that already, but what's your biggest superpower, Kelly?
Man, this is an interesting one. The first one that dropped into my head would be my ability to love, I think, and to provide love and to be love in the world and to offer that up with an open heart. I think that would be my biggest superpower. And then I think also being unwaveringly and relentlessly positive through thick and thin, and just finding the silver lining in the clouds no matter what. Those two together serve me pretty damn well.
That's awesome. And is it something that you've been like from the early days? You were always this one happy-go-lucky kind of girl, or something switched in your life?
Yeah, no, it's kind of been ongoing. Like I think my parents would say early on, I was always really outgoing and happy, and it's also definitely a practice and something that you continually to do all the time. And a word that I teach in this concept I teach in my practice is the concept of like active choice, and being positive and living life through a positive lens is an active choice for me that I continue to do even on the days when like I don't want to.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mindful choice to be positive, right? That's cool. So give us a little bit of background, So who are you? And we'll speak a little bit later what you do at the moment, but bring us back maybe 5-10 years back, and tell us who Kelly Trach was there then.
Totally. Yeah. I always say that like if I could have looked into a crystal ball into my future when I was like in high school, I would have like asked for the fortune teller for like all my money back, because I'm like, I don't want that life. Like that's not what I want to do. I had such a different life. So right now I work as an author. I work as a life coach around helping people master their mindset, and as a podcast host. But back in the day, like if we rewind back to high school even, I had always had my eyes on the prize of like starting my own business, but it had always been in the shape and the form of something really big and grand, like something huge, like the next Facebook, the next Amazon, something really important. And that was a very ego-driven choice, but I didn't really have those words back then. I was like your classic type A overachiever, And I went to business school on full scholarship. I graduated with honors, and then I finished, and I chose to move down to San Francisco. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and moved down to San Francisco to start my first tech startup, thinking that I was going to be building something cool and grand in the future of food. And one tech startup totally failed. And then I tried 2 more times and they both failed. And then I had a moment of reckoning where I was like, okay, what if I just did what I was actually good at? And what if I just shared what came naturally to me? So the first iterations of what I started doing began by talking about my health journey and my health story and my autoimmune condition. And I was just sharing it like on a blog, and people started to read it and people started to take interest. And then I wrote my first ebook. And then out of all the chapters in there, there was one chapter that really stood out. Everybody loved it the best. It was chapter 6, Shift Your Mind, Shift Your Life. And it was all about how I was using my mindset to heal and to get better and to improve my health and to believe that I was worthy and deserving and capable of getting back to normal and finding my natural set point. And then that kind of just evolved over time. That chapter turned into a little course, which turned into me talking about it more, which turned into me kind of pivoting and talking more about mindset and self-development. And here I am now with the full-blown podcast and courses and coaching clients, life coaching clients, and doing this stuff full time. So I would have never guessed I would have got here in a million years. But what I love most is that, Steve Jobs always says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And it's so true.
It is definitely true. So this is also what I wanted to ask you, you just quickly kind of mentioned this, but I think that's a very big part where you said that, you had the 3 failed startups. And then at that point of your life, you kind of said, okay, I'm just have to do what I'm, good at or I'm passionate at. But I think that's pretty hard part, to find out, to listen to yourself, or to even, I don't know, to even realize, there's still could be a million things, or you could be thinking, I'm good at 10 things, how do you decided to go that way? Or was it that journey that you told that you were just talking about your condition and then, kind of it resonated with people?
Yeah, it came through like a really intuitive moment. So something that I used to not do super well was I kind of didn't really understand that my body could give me input and direction, and that I had a voice inside myself that was clear and grounded, and it felt like my gut instinct. And this is like your intuition, this is your soul, this is your love-based voice inside you. It's the opposite of your ego or your inner critic or your negative self-talk. It's that like really grounded, rooted voice inside of you. And I didn't know how to really tap into that for most of my life. And I kind of always, as a person who kind of was really in her like yang, masculine energy, I had a really difficult time even like being open to the fact that, oh, like maybe I could be intuitive. Maybe I could like learn to be in my more receptive mode and my yin mode. And there was a point when I was taking a break from my third tech startup and I was on holiday in the middle of nowhere in like the Canadian woods at my partner's, his family's cabin. And it's like, really remote. There's a ton of trees. We're like the only cabin near the lake. And I had just taken this week off to do nothing. And my work was starting to feel really uphill and resistant and bad. And I was kind of getting this like gross feeling about it. Like I didn't want to touch my laptop. I didn't want to do work. I didn't want to get on a call. I didn't want to do anything. And I just took like a week off to like do things that I liked. And for the first time I had to like think of like, whoa, what are my hobbies? What do I actually like? Because I kind of forgot. And I was just enjoying like cooking and having fun. And then I kind of heard this little intuitive voice that just said, what if you just did what was easy for you? And what if you just did what came naturally to you? And it was like, oh, I've been not doing that my whole life. I was always like chasing this ideal or this big grand thing, trying to like prove myself or hustle and work hard, but like for a really external thing outside of myself, like waiting to get into Y Combinator to feel good about myself, or waiting to get my Stanford MBA to feel good about myself, or like waiting for somebody to put me on the cover of like Inc. magazine, like all this other stuff that I didn't even need, that stuff. And I was doing stuff I wasn't even good at. And I was like, none of this equation makes any sense. So what if we just try doing it the totally different way than I've ever done it before? And there we go. Then it turned into this. So sometimes when, everybody's going right and you go left, it can make the world of a difference.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting to hear, and it's also actually resonates also a little bit to. I had a podcast guest yesterday, Mr. Ed Rush, and we talked about like when he went 21 day in the woods, by itself, like it was tech fast for him. And basically we came up to the conclusion that, once you give a space for your brain, for yourself, once you take away all these kind of, external pressures, you put on yourself, this is like the moments when your brain's actually, like, the message it sends to you is much louder, it's much clearer, like the answers start coming there, but you have to give space, right? So seems like also something that happened to you. You took the week off, you felt that this is what you need to do, and the answers slowly start coming, basically. So that's interesting. Giving yourself space is I think kind of a little hack everybody could do. And awesome. So
Yeah.
taking action, taking action is something that is so hard to do, and we are trying to figure this out. We are building this self-improvement platform, where we try to help people to take that first action, try something out for 21 days, whatever, it's not a big commitment. It's 3 weeks out of 52 in a year is nothing, but still to take that first action, even if it's good for you, it's usually very hard for people. They put in some sort of a blocks in front of them, some sort of fears and stuff like that. So what do you think? What is your advice is for people to start taking action and really, start working on themselves?
Yeah, totally. That's such a great question because there's always that bit of like changing behaviors and changing patterns. My answer kind of comes in two folds. The first would be to make sure that you're taking the right choice for you. So like having that internal check-in, and like what I call, and I've made the word for it, is called the feelings-based approach. When you like see how that choice feels in your body, and if your body's giving you like a hell yes or giving you a hell no, if you feel really like expansive and open around the idea versus being like no thanks, and like having that feeling intuitive choice to make sure you're even like on the right path. Because I know for me, I'd always take action. I'm a very much like a self-starter, and I would like jump into the deep end with 2 feet, but I would not ever have a check-in to say like, is this the right choice for me? Is this really what I should be doing? Like, is this the way I want to do it, or is there something better I could do? Or if I'm presented with all these options, which one of these feels the best to start with first? So like having the intuitive check-in to make sure that you're doing the right thing that's right for you. And then the second piece would be to really get a hold on your mindset and master your mindset. I always teach, in my methodology is that if you start with the mindset work, the outside work falls into place. So the second piece is to really master your mindset and really get clear on like the mental blocks that are holding you back. Because I always believe that if you get the inside right, the outside falls into place. And this is like directly from what Eckhart Tolle will share about how if you do, the inner stuff and the inner work and the personal development and the mental thought work, once you take the action, it's so much easier because you're not worried about the negative inner critic or the fear-based voice or the doubts and the worries that like can really just screw you over from the start. And it's so much easier if you take action when you have that space inside your head, when it is clear.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Is that helpful?
It is for sure. I think I hope a lot of people can resonate with that, and I'm pretty sure, almost everybody could relate to this. Almost everybody. It's very hard to kind of start doing what you actually like, right? Like we are usually just put into these kind of frames, into these other people's stories, and we try to live those lives. So that's hard. But how do you, mastering mindset? Everybody, let's say, they listen to your advice now and they want to master the mindset, but I think it's much harder to do than to say. What could be some practical tips? What could be some maybe exercises, some things that you could do, to get to that mindset level?
Totally. So the way I define mindset is literally just the way you think. So it's what is happening in your mind, like when you take a shower, when you sit down to work, when you're on your way on your commute. It's like all the thoughts in your head. So we're pretty much just clearing that up. The first thing that I would teach people right off the bat, especially in this concept of it being hard, I always teach that if you think it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. But if you think it's going to be easy, it's going to be easy. So going in with the mindset that this is going to be easy. This is going to be easy for me to do. Like all I have to do is literally change the way I think. I don't have to go to some big seminar. I don't have to like do some big thing. I don't have to like pay somebody a ton of money. I don't have to go sit in like somebody's office for a bunch of hours and do like a bajillion sessions. I can just change my thoughts on my own. So I would break it down into, first starting with the fear. I think there's a lot of fear. And then also like doubt and worry. And then the third being like self-limiting beliefs. So the beliefs that, hold us back. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Who am I to do this? I can't do this. I'm not pretty enough for a YouTube channel, whatever kind of stuff comes up. But for the first one, for the fear, having a way that you can personify your fear and see it as two different voices. So I can really tell when I am tuning into the voice that's based in fear. So that's my inner critic, my negative self-talk, my doubts, my worries. And I envision my inner critic as like an iguana that sits on my shoulder. And I have named him Iggy Pop the iguana. And whenever I hear his fears getting really loud, I have to remind myself, like, that's Iggy's voice. That's not me. That's not my truth. That's not my voice that's based in love. Like, I have to like calm it down, like pat its head, feed it a grape, and like tell it to go to sleep. I like to just, teach people or teach my coaching clients to like personify it and get some distance from it to see that, you're not that voice. The same thing goes with your inner critic when you are hitting that wall with the worries or the doubts. And that little negative voice inside of your head is like, oh, you can't do that challenge, or you won't be able to lose the weight, or you won't be able to even start that plan, or you're not talented enough to even do this. To have a moment to like create space and personify that voice as well, that negative side of you, almost as like, the little devil that sits on your shoulder. And I give my inner critic a voice, and I call her Viola, from this movie that I used to watch growing up called She's the Man with Amanda Bynes. And it was a scene I always remembered of her at like a sorority dinner or something. And she was eating this gigantic turkey leg, and all the other girls were like, oh my God, Viola, like chew with your mouth closed. And she was getting all this sauce all over her, and she was like eating this big thing, and she's making a mess. And I remember I just visualize and have that lightness around it whenever I catch myself saying something really nasty to myself, and be like, oh, Viola, that's just you. And I have that visual of her in that movie, and it always kind of makes me smile, and it makes me a little lighthearted to kind of take a little pressure off the situation and think, oh, that's just my inner critic. Like, that's not really me. And to give it that distance again, to, be like, oh, that's totally not really who I am. And most importantly, like, having the awareness first when that little voice comes up, saying no thank you, and telling like Viola to go away, and then picking like a more loving thought instead, like, thank you, Viola, for saying that I am never going to be able to complete this challenge. I'm going to just shut the door, and I'm going to pick a more loving thought instead, that, you know what, I can do this. And just picking the loving thought anyways, even if it feels like you're pulling it like out of nowhere. Sometimes when we get into like positive words or positive affirmations, right at the start, it can feel like we're like literally whipping it like out of the air, or like we're pulling these things out of nowhere. And you're like, I don't know who says that. Like, I've never said that in my life. But just that practice of saying it until you get comfortable with it. And the last piece I would share would be around the self-limiting beliefs. So a really great way to get rid of your self-limiting beliefs is to figure out wherever you are saying, I want to do this, but blank, or I want to do this, but I can't, or I want to do this, and this would be a good idea, but yeah, I don't think I can do this. And the I can't, or but, or yeah, but can really be like those little words in the sentence. And then whatever you say after it, you're like, oh, that's kind of where I'm holding myself back. That's where I'm making a story. That's where I'm, giving my power away to a story that is, perhaps not even true. And when you find that spot where you say, I want to buy the house, but I can't because like, oh, it's going to be too much pressure on me on my business to work even harder. Whenever you get that last bit of the sentence, ask yourself why 5 times and like drill down to the very bottom belief, because you're usually going to get something like, because I'm not good enough, or because I'm not worthy, or because I'm not deserving of this, big investment. And whatever that bottom belief is, that's usually like the big kicker. And essentially like calling it out and getting clarity is like 90% of it. Because once you know, and then you run into a situation and you use the same sort of excuse, you're like, oh, wait a sec, I actually know what's happening here. So I have 3 tutorials that I will send to you that
Yeah.
explain those 3 practices in depth that you can link to in the show notes if the listeners want to take a peek.
Amazing. No, I hope they want, because that's very valuable stuff, and I can also relate to this, especially the last part, where like the self-limiting beliefs, and I actually discussed this with my friend while we were watching a basketball game, and you could see like it was very fun, because at the top professional sport. It's mostly a mind game. It's not so much about the physical and skills, because they all are super skillful, and they could all do crazy stuff, and it's not about so much about the physical stuff. It's all about the mind stuff. How they play the minds. About the how confident they are. And sometimes in the games you could see when one of the team starts losing in their minds. They could see when they kind of starting to give up in their mind. So what I want to say is that if you give up in your mind, how the hell are you gonna win in real life, right? Like if you already like, no, I cannot do this. I will not do this. It's not gonna work. I'm not gonna lose weight. So, if you're already lost in your mind, it's not gonna happen. So, switching that mindset, but also, as you said, to actually switch that mindset, you have to be, you have to build that awareness, that mindfulness as kind of skill, right? So to take even a small step back. Amazing. Awesome. So I hear a little bit of hints. I don't know, but do you practice visualization or law of attraction or anything like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was so excited for you to ask me about this because I love this stuff. I practice a lot of visualization. I talk a lot in depth of what my visualization practices look like and what I teach my clients, especially in my course all about how to master your mindset called Your Best Life, because I really do believe you only get to live your best life if you've conquered all of your inner critic crap first. Otherwise, it's gonna like never let you get there. um, yeah, visualization is an awesome tool. It's definitely like the granddaddy tool of all tools. I think before you even visualize, you really gotta master your mindset and your inner critic and all those fears and the doubts and worries, because otherwise I know I used to do this. I'd sit in my visualizations and I'd think like, oh, I can't do that, or that's too big, or maybe not for me, or maybe I should pick something smaller. And sometimes we play ourselves down, but visualization is such a powerful tool. It's that concept of mental rehearsal. I don't know if you're into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work at all, or if you've been, are you
I've
familiar
I've
with him?
I've heard about him. I think my previous guest also mentioned him. It's one of the kind of things on my reading list. But please, shed us some light on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, he's great. I've been following a lot of his guided meditations and visualizations, and he has this concept of mentally rehearsing things in your brain. And
Hmm.
I love the way he defines it, like visualization as mental rehearsal, because that makes so much intuitive sense. I used to do plays in high school, and every time I think like, okay, we're just going to rehearse the play. We're not performing it yet, but we're just going to walk it all out. We're going to go through all of it. And I think that's such a great way to explain visualization. So if I'm spending some time visualizing, I'm mentally rehearsing in the present moment in the body of like who I am when I am doing like my 10-year vision, and like the biggest, boldest version of my life of like me on book tour, speaking at like the San Francisco Grace tour or Grace Cathedral, like on my book tour, and what that looks like, and also to visualize it in the form of you and your body looking out through your own eyes and being able to look up and down and around versus looking almost as if you are on a screen on TV. I find that tool even more helpful because it really pulls you into the moment because you're like, oh, I can see the people in the audience. I can see, my partner Chris sitting in the front row. And I really like that tool in comparison to like visualizing it as if I'm sitting in the back of the event, looking at myself on stage, because then it feels a little less real. And the best part about visualization is that like your brain, parts of your brain are not that smart. So sometimes like parts of your brain and your subconscious mind doesn't always know what's real and what's fake. So this is the fun part about visualizations and affirmations and thinking about yourself in the best and highest ability, because you're feeding your subconscious mind that kind of stuff in the same way that your logical rational brain can be like, oh yeah, I know that that's not me right now, but your subconscious mind, like when you get that elevated feeling and elevated emotion and you feel really good and you pull all those beliefs and those visuals and ideals then your subconscious mind has like something to hold on to. And it kind of starts going away and away at things. And the subconscious mind, that's been an area I've been really interested in and dabbling in, of clearing subconscious blocks and then reprogramming my subconscious, because the subconscious makes up like all of the ways we do things. And sometimes we don't even know it's there and we don't even know what it's listening to. So if you're going to give it something to think about it, like give it some good stuff to chew on.
Okay, that's awesome. We also kind of try to practice it and try to get better, but I still get it. Even though I have the knowledge and we are really doing this from our hearts, but I still get this inner voice. I still get this like like you said, it's too big. Like that my vision is too big, and what the hell, I need to shut that voice down. But that's also a fun part. Like this fun part is to have this little viola inside. and shut the door in front of her. That's interesting, and I can relate. I think I heard that as well, and I'm trying to what you said, to have this first person view, right? Like, so you're an actor, you're not watching a movie, but you are actually the superstar, you're the main star in that movie, and you are like now playing it in front of the audience. So that's awesome. So tell me now, the main thing you do a lot of stuff. You have the podcast, you have the courses. I saw you have also this inner circle group, of your community, and you also do a lot of life coaching. So I was always super curious, on this topic, and basically what it's like to be a life coach. And it's not my aspiration to be one, but I'm just want to hear from you exactly how did that journey start, and how are you doing right now?
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to be very clear. I did not go to life coaching school. Life coaching school was like definitely not something that was like I didn't consider, but I have literally come to all these tools because I needed them in my life myself.
Yeah.
And I just teach people the methodologies and the formulas that I have handcrafted for myself. And it's my own style and the way I do things and how I teach it and what has worked well. And life coaching really fell into my lap so organically. When the universe wants you to do something, it like will cosmically arrange for all this stuff to happen for you. And you're like, what? I remember doing an event, and this woman came up to me after my event and she was like, oh, I loved what you shared. Would you be open to coaching me? Like, do you offer coaching? And I remember thinking, me? Like, why do you want me to help you with coaching? I remember thinking, like, you could go to like a Tony Robbins event. Like, no, not me. And then, that was sort of the first time I realized that, oh, maybe I should like look into this, or maybe I should give this a go. So for a while, like I would just help people for free and work with people and help boost up my own coaching skills. And then, like I said before, like you only connect the dots looking backwards. And I realized like, oh, I have loved teaching my whole life. I've been in like teaching roles since I could legally work in Canada, teaching like babysitting class and like TAing in university, like TAing 3 times, and to being like a tutor. And I used to like have a little thing where kids would come to my house after school in high school. And I was like, I've always enjoyed this. And I could finally see, like looking back, how all the dots connected. So I offered a ton of coaching for free for a while to improve my skills. And then as soon as people started to come to me who were referrals that I didn't really know, that's when I was like, oh, maybe I could start charging money for this. And then I started charging money for it. And then it kind of just took off from there, like having it in that kind of sense where it was such an organic, natural thing. And knowing and believing that, my tools were my tools, and that they were so important because they're coming from my own mouth, and the people that listen to me and my audience or my listeners or my coaching clients. And the same thing goes with, with you, if you become a life coach, or for anyone else that's listening, like the way you say it and who you are is essentially what people are buying and what people want. They don't really care, like, so much. Some people want a life coach that went to life coaching school, and that's cool. But people are going to you because they love you. They love the way you teach it, the way you explain it. They love your methodologies. They love your metaphors. They love your voice, your energy, the way you think about the world. And that's what people are looking for in a life coach. The best thing I can always, give people as the advice is just to find somebody who speaks your language, that talks in the way that you get it. And it doesn't really matter who they are, or even if it's like a mentor, or if it's somebody you look up to at work, like learning from the people who you listen to and understand when they talk. Because a lot of people can tell you the same sort of stuff, or like there's like, different books on mindset, but it only takes like that one person to be like, oh, I actually get it. So it was such a natural, organic evolution for me. And another thing I could have literally never planned or mapped
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's also reminds me of one thing I heard on some podcast episode I've listened, which basically said, how to find out what could be your passion, how to find out what you're really good at that you could turn into something that you do it full time. And they said the technique is basically just to listen what kind of compliments you get, what kind of where do people really say, wow, you're really good at that, you're really good at that, so seems like exactly what happened to you. You had no idea that you could be a life coach, but then somebody approached you, and basically said that, wow, I want you, as a life coach. So this seems like you are in this very right natural path, so that's always super nice to see, more people like this, when you need more happiness and more of the feeling that you are on the right track. So about life coaching, so you said you started for free, you learned a lot, what are the more important things. So this is what I'm really curious about, like compared yourself as taking your first client and having them now. What's something that now that you didn't know before? What's the biggest kind of takeaway from this experience you had so far?
Ooh, yeah. Definitely believing that I was good enough. My my inner critic and my negative self-talk for a lot of it at the beginning was like, "Oh, I can't believe that you're working with these people because you're not a certified life coach." And like that was a little thing my inner critic and my Viola would just hang on to. And it got to a point of like, no, this is really good. Like my clients are loving what I'm doing. I'm helping them. They give me if we finish a coaching series, they like shower me with compliments and they are really enjoying it. And it's like I did an episode on the podcast called about how to find your zone of genius, and sometimes how we're the only ones that can't see it. And it's like when everybody else is in on the clue, but you're not. It's like when you have that friend who's an amazing comedian and you're like, oh, you're so funny, you could do stand-up comedy, and they're
Yeah,
like, oh no, that's not me.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
that's kind of how I had felt. Like I wish from earlier on I was more serious about it, and instead of my first thought being like, oh my god, you want me to coach you, like go to a Tony Robbins session, he's got better answers, versus like owning my power, standing in my truth and saying, you know what, I am good at this, like this is something I can help you with. Like even when I was like doing it for free, like being like, I am providing you value. Like this is something that I am good at, and owning that worth inside me. That was something that took me a while to come to. And even like in the days when I started charging money for things, that was always, I had to really master my money mindset and my money story too, because that was a pivot too of like, oh, who am I to charge this? And, who am I to offer this? And being confident and rooted and just mastering your mindset. Like I know I kind of sound like a broken record with that thing, but I mean, I teach this stuff because I need it. Like they always say you teach what you need to learn and know, and I literally teach this stuff because I use it all of the time. And I recently did a price raise about a month ago, and I had to really master my inner critic and master those voices because as you rise up, they always say new level, new devil. And as you get more successful, and you just have to always come back and return to love and always master that thought and be like, oh, I hear you, Viola, but no, thank you. And have that awareness. Like as long as you know what's going on, that's like the best part. Because, as long as you're aware that that's happening and that you can actually not take on that voice, I think that's like, the biggest, most powerful thing ever. When you realize that, oh, like my love-based voice and my fear-based voice are different. And that even though my inner critic is giving me a very hard time about who am I to do this, or who am I to charge this, or who am I to offer, like, when I rolled out my really expensive like coaching program for like a year, I was like, oh my God, who am I to do this? And be like, no, master your mindset. Like, what if you can really just step into that? Like, what if you don't pick that voice? What if you just like say no, thank you, and close the door? And I mean, it's a continual practice, but definitely one that the sooner you get a grip on it, the sooner you can do more stuff and feel more confident as you go on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super. Yeah. Very interesting. And one thing that came to my mind now while I was listening to you, and also, while we're doing this, with the Villa of my wife, these 21-day challenges, and, building the self-improvement platform. And when I explain at when what we do to people, and I say, the Maslow pyramid of needs, right? And so we basically I said, we take those people who are at the at the top level. They have they have the shelter, they got the food, they're healthy, they have the security, they got a job or something like that. They got the kind of the base of life done, and then they go to that level where like, okay, now I need to really work on myself, on self-fulfillment, on my own energy, and happiness. But then I feel a little bit sorry of what about the people who are battling the still the battles, the levels down, they are battling how to make a living, how to have enough health and security in life and stuff like that. How could what could be your advice for them, so who are having so much of these external pressures and difficulties in life? How could they benefit still from basically what's mastering the mindset? How can they master the mindset?
Yeah, I definitely believe that it's something that's available to all of us. It's really just choosing to think differently, like what, Steve Jobs always says and what's on the packaging of every Apple product. Like, think different, that choice to think differently about your life and to tell it in the empowering way, to find the way in which you want to tell it. I'm a big fan of Abraham Hicks, and Abraham always talks about the importance of telling your life story in the way you want to tell it. And even if you only have an ounce of good, focusing on that and focusing on whatever is good in your life, because whatever you focus on expands, and whatever you give your attention to, you create more of. So even if you have like the tiniest thing to hold on to, focus on that, give that attention, give that time, and then understand that, thinking better thoughts is available to everybody. It's not like, and you can do it by yourself. Like, you can get resources, you can take books from the library, you can watch YouTube videos. There's like endless free stuff out there. You can learn, you can share with others. It doesn't have to be this grand, expensive thing. You don't ever have to like hire a coach ever. And it's just a little conscious choice to think a little bit better, to look for the silver lining. I think a really great book to illustrate this point is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, about his time in the concentration camps and how he really used his mindset to like stay positive. And I think that's such a powerful book of just, oh my God, what our mind is capable of in the most difficult and harsh and bleak conditions. And I think that is a book that I would just recommend to anybody who feels like they are nowhere or that they can't use these tools, or for people who just want an example or like a sampler of the power of this work and how it applies to anything and anywhere. And I think one of the most powerful things that I got from that book was about a lot of people were thinking in the concentration camps that they were going to be out by Christmas time. And when Christmas time had came and rolled around, Viktor Frankl had assumed that he said, I think they had died of a broken heart, that they had thought that they were going to be out by Christmas, and then it came and, their expectations didn't match up with the reality. And that is what he had assumed caused their passing. And I thought that was such a fascinating piece around what our minds are capable of and what we can really set our minds to. And like, if we believe that like, it would always get better and things will get better, and the better it gets and the better it gets, and focusing on that narrative versus like dipping into the harshness or the darkness, we can just really turn it around faster. And yeah, that's the book I would recommend to really illustrate that point.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's awesome. Yeah. I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope of visualizing what you want to have, but also not attaching yourself too much to that, like if it's not happening, right? Because the key to happiness is no expectation, like the Buddhist believes, and how you just illustrated in that book, where basically, they were so disappointed they kind of died inside because the reality didn't match expectations. And basically, if they wouldn't had such high expectations, they would had a different, kind of reaction to the reality. So yeah, like I said, I think it's very hard to find that balance between wanting something, visualizing, focusing on that, but also being okay if that's maybe not happening as fast as you wish. Or yeah,
totally, I get that. That's like the hardest part out of all of it. That is the biggest piece of the work, is what I call like indifference to outcome. So being okay if you have it and being okay if you don't. And that is like the really like higher end of the mindset work, because that is definitely more of a practice. I'm very
Patience.
cautious about the words, yeah, that I use as well, and how I speak, because what you say verbally creates reality. So I don't like to say, oh, it's hard or surrendering is difficult, but I definitely would say it's surely a practice, and one for myself as well. Like surrendering, trusting, allowing, letting go. Those have taken me time to master and really be okay with. I think one of my favorite things is just like, well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst case scenario if this doesn't happen this way, or if I don't hit whatever amount of downloads that I wanted on the podcast by this date? What if I don't, end up getting these podcast guests? What if I can't pay whatever my bills on time? Like, what's the worst case scenario? I could worst case scenario, I could move back home with my parents. Like worst case scenario, I could get another job. Worst case scenario, like I could work for somebody else. Like I could work for Gabby Bernstein or Danielle Laporte or like Marie Forleo, and I could just take a break on my visions. And that can be such a powerful thing to tap into when you feel like you're putting all your eggs in one basket and you kind of need to let go and, release the grip a little bit, is to think, what's the worst case scenario? Because it's usually not that bad. And even if I had to like quit everything I was doing and go work for like Danielle Laporte, that's a pretty good option too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it is like that. It's very hard, it's very hard once you're sometimes, so deep into one thought, one sort of a dream reality, whatever you want to have. It's so hard to, have that side look, like what would actually, happen if I don't achieve this? Actually, maybe it's even, for the best, like what happened to you, right? Like, I mean, you had a free failed startups. Imagine, if you was successful, you raised Series A, B, and you would have this, that life you wanted to have, but what you understand now that actually it was not really you, right? Like you would be still following somebody else's path.
Totally.
Great, a lot of value bombs, like John Lee Dumas says on his podcast. Thanks a lot for everything, Kelly. So before we go, I have this rapid fire section, and
Yeah,
you ready for that?
totally. Let's do
All
it.
right, let's do it. So the first question goes like this: what's the personal habit that made you a better person?
Ooh, personal habit. I get into peak state slash alignment every single day before I do work. That has totally shifted my life 180 degrees.
What is that? Sorry.
I get into my alignment, so I get into my
Hmm.
absolute best feeling space before I take any action. And that's like a mental conditioning thing I do. I teach that how to do that in my course, Your Best Life, and it's basically what Tony Robbins would also describe as like your peak state, like your best top feeling. And then with all that amazing positive energy and emotion, then I will do it. So like I did all of my routines and rituals to like get into my good feeling space before I got on this call. Like I would never just roll out of bed and hop on and like go. I give myself that time to like get into that high vibe spot. That's what I mean by alignment and like peak state.
Gotcha. So you pump yourself up.
Totally.
Yeah, that's funny because actually this is what I did also before because I was feeling a little bit down, today and everything, and I was like, okay, I need to put on like Eminem's "Lose Yourself." That song is always like the lyrics. I just go deep, and I'm like, this is the one shot, one opportunity, this kind of stuff, and it pumps me up. Awesome. And what's the habit you want to develop next? What's next you want to kind of in your personal development that you want to work on?
Yeah, releasing control. That is a perpetual one for me. Letting go of control. I'm hoping to hire some more teammates this year. I would love to be at a point where I can hire some full-time teammates and releasing the grip and letting that be okay versus I sometimes have a tendency to be like, oh, I'm gonna do it all. Versus
Hmm.
like, you know what? You guys can do this too. Like it's not just me. Releasing the grip is a continual practice for me,
Hmm.
for sure.
Gotcha. And the internet resource that made your life more simple.
Ooh, like a tech tool or like a book or like a program.
Could be, yeah. There's the next question about the book, so let's save that for later. but
Okay.
but but it could be any tool, yeah.
Internet tool. I mean, I love Google Drive. I think that's the most genius, easy thing ever. That has made my life so simple. I love also keeping one browser open at a time. Like I don't like to have more tabs open than needed. Like if I'm working on something, I keep the tabs that I need open for that and I don't have miscellaneous stuff. Actually, that is my favorite tool to sort of like simplify my life, and something that you don't really need to download or do or anything. It's just something you can just be more cognizant of, because when I have like a bajillion tabs open, I fragment my attention really quickly versus just doing the thing I do, and just taking tasks to completion. That I always do my best to just stay focused, don't get distracted on Instagram, don't go on Facebook, do my thing, and then you can open up the tab and the new browser.
That's good. That's a nice little hack. Actually, I think I'm gonna do it as well, because I'm so easily distracted by all these tabs. I'm just gonna have to freaking close them. Awesome. A newsletter you don't delete?
Ooh, I only subscribe to 3 people's newsletters, actually. That's a personal practice that I do. I don't follow other people's stuff. I find it a distraction. I'm really big into staying in your own lane. So I don't follow other life coaches. I don't follow other people. I don't care what other people are making. I'm very focused on creating what my community wants, and what my people want. So I only follow 3. I follow Jackie Carr, a coach that I love. She's a goal coach. I follow Rock Your Bliss, which is a yoga-inspired coaching and transformation company. And I follow Jess Lively, who is a coach who teaches all about law of attraction and alignment and flow. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, all three is, I think, more than enough in nowadays. And so the question of the day, a book that changed your life, besides the book already mentioned.
I kind of have 2 that I love the best. Number 1, Danielle Laporte's The Desire Map. I love that book so much. Danielle she inspired so much inside of me. She was kind of the person that started the whole revolution for me. And number 2, Jen Sincero's You're a Badass at Making Money. I love that book. Jen Sincero is a soul sister. I'm obsessed with the way she writes, and I really wouldn't be where I am today without Jen Sincero and that book. So those 2 changed my life, my mental state and my bank account.
Well, that's like 2 biggest assets you have. Wow, amazing. That's great. Thank you so much, Kelly, for everything, for your energy, for your knowledge, for your positivity, for your advice and kind of this just lots of good stuff, and I hope the people who finish this podcast till the end. I know that a lot of people, they'll listen to the first 10-20 minutes. Attention span is not that long, but I hope for the ones who stayed until the end of it, they really got the value at least as much as I did. So thank you for being an inspiration, Kelly.
Oh, thank you so much, Taras. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you too. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Kelly. You can find the show notes of this episode, which will include all the links and resources, by simply going to 21dayhero.com/Kelly. And of course, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any kind of feedback, if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening to this through audio, of course, any kind of reviews are highly, highly appreciated. So thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day.